I now give the call to the Honourable the Minister for Defence Materiel.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, the best part of that speech is it's over. 15 minutes of just rancid negativity. Member for Indi, who's now left the chamber, has been going around Australia with the Leader of the Opposition, pretending to be the workers' friend, pretending to be the workers' champion. What a fraud! What a fraud! What an absolute hoax! I wonder if she tells them.
The Minister should withdraw the term fraud.
I withdraw. But I wonder, Mr Deputy Speaker, I wonder whether the member for Indi tells those workers what she said in the work choices debate, when she said that work choices was big but fair. When she said work choices was big but fair. The fact is, Mr Deputy Speaker, there is only one champion of Australian workers in this place, and it's the Australian Labor Party. We are the ones with the runs on the board. We are the party that established workers' compensation, that established the workers' pension, that introduced universal superannuation, that got rid of work choices. It's good to see the architect of work choices, the member for Mayo, in the chamber today. And we are the party that has helped create 750,000 jobs in the last 3 years. 750,000 jobs in the last 3 years, and at the same time, in the United States, they've lost 6 million jobs. Before the global recession, Mr Deputy Speaker, unemployment in Australia and the United States was both under 5%. Unemployment in Australia now is 5.3, and in the United States it's now 9.1. It tells us, Mr Deputy Speaker, that we made the right decision and that the Liberal Party made the wrong decision in opposing the stimulus. If we hadn't acted, unemployment today would be more like it is in the United States, 8 or 9%. And the fact is, unemployment goes up quickly and takes a long, long time to come down. It would have taken 5, maybe 10 years before unemployment reached the level that it is again now today. And that would have meant, for a generation of workers, perhaps a decade of unemployment. But what does the Leader of the Opposition say about this? In his first major speech as the Leader of the Opposition on economic matters, in a speech called Economic Fundamentals, he said this in March of 2010, quote, "The economic stimulus wasn't necessary to strengthen Australia's economy at a time of global recession." It wasn't necessary. This is a speech called Economic Fundamentals, and he got it, Mr Deputy Speaker, fundamentally wrong. It shows bad judgment, bad economic judgment. But his judgment is bad on other things as well, because if those opposite really cared about jobs, really cared about Australian industry, they would vote for the minerals resource rent tax. Think about this. Over the last 2 weeks, BHP has announced its largest profit ever on record, over $23 billion, their highest ever. On the other side of the country, you've got BlueScope Steel, another great Australian company, announcing a $1 billion loss. A high Australian dollar that's helped to create a two-speed economy, and this is one of the best examples of it. Miners are earning more, pushing up the value of the Australian dollar, and that's making it harder for Australian industries like manufacturing. It's only fair then, Mr Deputy Speaker, and it only makes sense that mining companies pay a little bit more to help other industries like BlueScope Steel, like the industries that the member for Indi pretends to care about, to pay a little bit less. And it's the same bad judgment. The Leader of the Opposition is displaying the same bad judgment when it comes to climate change. Now remember this. On both sides of the House, both major parties agree that we should cut our emissions by 5% by 2020. The debate isn't how much we should cut it by. The debate is about what's the best, what's the cheapest way to do that. The advice from Treasury is that the opposition's plan will be twice as expensive as the government's plan. And the Australian Industry Greenhouse Network today, on the front page of the Sydney Morning Herald, says the same thing. That's the Business Council of Australia, Australian Industry Group, the Coal Association, all major Australian industries under the banner of the Australian Industry Greenhouse Network saying the same thing, that the opposition's plan to cut emissions by 5% by 2020 is twice as expensive as the government's. Now think about this, Mr Deputy Speaker. If you had to drive a car today from Canberra to Sydney and you had a choice between two cars, one cost $50 in petrol and the other cost $100 in petrol, you would, because you are a smart man, pick the cheapest one. Anyone with any nous would. It's as simple as that. And that is what we are doing. That is what we are doing. We are selecting the cheapest and most efficient way to cut emissions by 5% by 2020. And the fact that the Leader of the Opposition has not chosen this path goes to his economic judgment. Paul Kelly made this point a couple of weeks ago in The Australian. On the 31st of August, he said this, quote, "It was said correctly of Howard before the 96 election that the public knew him and trusted him on the economy. That claim cannot be made of Abbott." That's Paul Kelly in The Australian in August of this year, Mr Deputy Speaker, and he was spot on. Remember, this is the Leader of the Opposition who slept through the vote in this chamber, 5 divisions in this chamber, on whether we should stimulate the economy to stop a recession. He cared so much about it then he didn't even turn up for the vote. This is the Leader of the Opposition who appointed Barnaby Joyce as his chief financial advisor. And this is the Leader of the Opposition who went to the last election with a $10 billion hole in his costings, and now, just a year later, it's blown out to a $70 billion black hole. Now, just to put that $70 billion black hole in perspective, that's about the same amount of cuts that the Greek government has to make. Just to put it in perspective, that $70 billion is about the size of the New Zealand government's economy, about the same size as New Zealand's economy. So he has a black hole now in his budget, the same size as the New Zealand's budget, the same size as the cuts that the Greek government have to make. His economic judgment is so bad now, Mr Deputy Speaker, that he's taken to attacking every economist that doesn't agree with him on this issue of how we tackle climate change. Members may remember his attack on economists only a couple of months ago, where he said this. This is the Leader of the Opposition, quote, "So it may well be that Australian economists think that a carbon tax and an emissions trading scheme is the way to go. Maybe that's a comment on the quality of our economists rather than on the merits of the argument." You know who this reminds me of, Deputy Speaker? Reminds me of a former member for Oxley, Pauline Hanson, in her famous 60 Minutes interview in 1996. I remember when she was confronted by the facts from the Department of Immigration about Asian immigration, which showed that in fact they weren't the facts, that in fact we weren't being swamped by Asians. And what did Pauline Hanson say then? Well, they're just book figures. They're just book figures. I don't believe them. This is what the Leader of the Opposition is doing now. They're just book figures. I don't believe them. He's acting more like Hanson than Menzies, Mr Deputy Speaker. He's acting more like Hanson than Howard. Everything that he says now on climate change, on putting a price on carbon, is proving to be wrong, whether it's for the cement industry, whether it's steel, whether it's aluminium or Qantas. It's all turned out to be nonsense. All turned out to be just hysterical nonsense, all made up. And there is no better example of this than the coal industry. Remember what the Leader of the Opposition said about coal. He said it would be the death of the coal industry. Well, what happened the day after we made the announcement? I'll tell you what happened. Peabody Coal announced the biggest takeover offer for a coal company in Australia's history, $4.7 billion for MacArthur Coal. Now that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. That's not the sort of money that you would invest if you thought that this was going to be the death of the coal industry. The fact is, Mr Deputy Speaker, that the coal industry has a great future. The member opposite knows that. You don't need to be Bob Woodward to work that out. Remember Watergate? Remember Bob Woodward's old mate Deep Throat. What did he used to say? He used to say, just follow the money. Well, to work out if this Leader of the Opposition's scare campaign is genuine, or whether it's not, just follow the money. And that's what I've done. I've had a look at the share registry of all of those members opposite to see if they're investing in energy or coal companies since we made the announcement of the carbon price. Last month, the member for Wentworth declared shares in Winmar Resources. Senator Adams declared shares in Woodside Petroleum Group, BHP, Duet and Ski. Senator Cash, shares in Asiano Group, BHP, Emeco, One Steel, Woodside Petroleum. Senator Fisher, she declared shares in Reclaim Industries, Terramin, Wesfarmers. Senator Humphreys declared that he bought shares in AGL Energy, APA, Bow Energy, Oz Minerals, Woodside Petroleum, Newcrest Mining. Member for Stirling bought shares in Newland Resources, GR Engineering. Member for Brisbane, she bought 88,333 shares in Australian Pacific Coal. Not the sort of thing you'd do if you thought the coal industry was going to die. Member for Kooyong acquired Woodside Petroleum shares. Member for Flynn. The member for Flynn bought 10,000 shares in the East Energy Resources Group. Senator Ronaldson bought Galaxy Resources shares. My old mate, the member for Fadden, he's bought shares in Conquest Mining. Senator Johnson, My Magnet Mining. Redback Mining. Follow the money, Mr Deputy Speaker. Follow the money if you want to find out the truth. And I'll tell you this, you'll find this out. You'll find this out, that since we made the announcement on the carbon price, 1 in 6 members of the opposition have bought shares in resource companies. And these are the people who are going around their communities, going around their electorates, saying it's going to destroy the coal industry, it's going to destroy the economy. Well, they come in here, they say it's going to frighten off investment. Well, it certainly hasn't frightened off investment on the other side, has it? Instead of listening to what they're saying in here, Mr Deputy Speaker, look at what they're buying. Look at what they're buying, and you'll find out, as Deep Throat said, follow the money. They're either pretty stupid, or they don't believe what the Leader of the Opposition is saying. What takes the cake, though? What takes the cake is the Leader of the Opposition's claim that this is all socialism dressed up as environmentalism. Who would have thought that John Howard was the red under the bed all along? Who would have thought John Howard was the red under the bed? Because if John Howard had won the 2007 election, we'd have an emissions trading system right now. And those members opposite who were elected in the 2007 election, they all would have voted for it. They all would have voted for it. They would have voted for the type of scheme they're opposing now, including the Leader of the Opposition. And what's he saying now? Suddenly this thing that he would have voted for if John Howard was elected is now socialism dressed up as environmentalism. And what's he doing to try and stop socialism dressed up as environmentalism? Well, he's organising a workers' revolt so he can replace it with a centrally planned system. It just shows how ridiculous and how desperate this scare campaign has become. Well, Mr Deputy Speaker, let me tell you this. Let me tell you this. This party, this parliament and this country is still capable of important reform, and we will prove that in the days and the weeks ahead.